on a Tuesday. I was in my corner office, on the 70th floor of One Vanderbilt. The city lights below me. Finalizing a $500 million acquisition. My phone buzzed on the glass desk. A group text from my mother. Jennifer. I read it. Sarah. Your father and I have discussed it. After your disrespect at dinner, we've decided it's best if you're no longer part of this family. Don't come for Thanksgiving. We're done. The words were cold. Final. A second later. Another notification. My brother, Chris, had hearted the message. Have you ever been the black sheep who was secretly the once? I didn't cry. I didn't text back. I just stared at the message. The blue light of my data terminal, washing over my face. Done. A single, four-letter word to erase 29 years. I swiveled in my chair, away from the billion-dollar view of New York and toward my laptop. I opened it and logged into my private wealth portal with Morgan Stanley. My fingers were steady. The anger wasn't hot. It was cold. Clinical. This wasn't a family drama. This was accounting. I picked up my secure line and dialed David Chin, my private banker. It was 1:53 p.m. I knew I was waking him up. But David manages a portfolio with $15 billion in assets under management. He answers. His voice was thick with sleep, but instantly professional. Sarah, is everything all right? David. I apologize for the hour. I need to make some immediate changes. I settled back in my chair. My voice flat. Liquidate the Miller Family Trust at market open. All automated payments from my main accounts are to be canceled. Effective immediately. There was a pause. I could hear him tapping on a keyboard. Sarah. That's the trust for your family. The mortgage. The tuition. That's a significant move. Is there a problem? Just a change in investment strategy. David. Another pause. He understood the subtext. Of course. Sarah. I'll have it processed by the pre-market bell. It's done. Thank you. I hung up. I wasn't finished. I opened my personal finance dashboard. A complex web of payments I had built over 5 years. I clicked on the line item labeled Connecticut Mortgage, Miller Residence. Cancelled. The insurance policy covering their 2 cars. Cancelled. I logged into the Yale University payment portal. Christopher Miller. Law. Class of next year. A $70,000 tuition payment was scheduled for the 1st of the month. I clicked Cancel Scheduled Payment. Next. The monthly consulting retainer I paid to my father. Michaeler. A $10,000 transfer that let him pretend he was still a successful businessman. Cancelled. Finally. The authorized user credit line for my mother. Jennifer. Cancelled. I looked at the clock on my screen. 12:03 a. It took 12 minutes to sever every financial tie that bound me to them. I leaned back, and finally, for the first time, I took a deep breath. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel anger. I felt light. The burden was gone. I leaned back, the leather of my chair creaking in the silence of the 70th floor. I looked out at the New York skyline, a glittering web of light stretching into the dark. And finally, the why flooded in. Why had I let it go on this long? For 5 years. I had been the Miller family's secret benefactor. The charity case daughter was, in reality, the sole source of their affluent lifestyle. I pulled up the master spreadsheet. I kept hidden on a secure server. The total was staggering. Even to me. $25 million. Funneled quietly into their lives while they openly pitied me for not having a real job. I paid off the mortgage on their sprawling suburban Connecticut home. I covered my father's investment losses from his failed consulting business. I funded my brother Chris's entire golden boy path, from his prep school to his Ivy League law degree at Yale. And what did I get in return? I got to drive my 2018 Subaru to Thanksgiving dinner at the house I paid for and listen to my father, Michael, lecture me across the dinner table. Sarah, you need to think about your future, he'd say, patting my hand. These little tech projects are fine, but you need a 401k. You need stability. Look at your brother. That is a sound investment. I just nodded. and smiled, and passed the potatoes. The truth is, I hadn't been lying to them. Not really. I had been living a partitioned life. It's a psychological survival strategy. You compartmentalize. On one side of the partition was Apex Strategies, my hedge fund. The CEO who managed $15 billion in assets under management and employed 200 people. The woman who closed half-billion-dollar deals before midnight. On the other side was just Sarah, the disappointing daughter, the one who was still finding herself, the one who wore jeans to family gatherings because she must not have a professional wardrobe. I built that wall intentionally. It was the only way to keep the person I had to be from completely destroying the people they needed me to be. It was the only way to protect my success from their judgment, their questions, their inevitable attempts to manage it for me. And, as I was finally admitting tonight, it was the only way to protect their fragile egos from my reality. I had been their safety net. And tonight, they hadn't just disowned me. They had, with one text message, finally given me permission to cut the ropes. I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, my phone started exploding. Not with apologies. Or questions. Or maybe we went too far. It was pure, unfiltered rage. I let the calls from my mother go to voicemail. I ignored the texts from my brother. Chris. That just said, followed by call Dad. Now. Then. My father. Michael. Called. I let it ring twice. Then answered. Putting it on speaker. I didn't say anything. I just heard sputtering. Sarah. What did you do? I stayed silent. I just listened to him breathe. A sharp, angry sound. I just got a call from Yale University, he yelled, his voice cracking. Your brother's tuition payment. It bounced. Bounced! Do you understand me? I told them the trust had it. I looked like a fool. I examined a data chart on my screen, tracking the pre-market opening in Asia. Are you listening to me? He shouted. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is what happens when you don't have a plan. Sarah, you're almost 30 years old. When are you going to grow up? He was just getting warmed up. You can't just float around doing these little projects on your computer. You really need to start pulling your weight. You need to get a real job. A real job. Your mother and I, he said, his voice lowering into that familiar, condescending tone of disappointment. We can't carry you forever. Sarah. We can't carry you forever. The irony was so profound it was almost breathtaking. It was a physical weight. He was standing in a house I paid for, demanding I get a real job so I could pull my weight and fix a problem that he was only experiencing because I had, 12 hours ago, stopped paying for his entire life from my unreal job. I'd felt a small, lingering flicker of guilt that morning. A little voice asking, was it too much? That phone call didn't just extinguish the guilt. It erased it. It burned the very memory of it from my mind. He hadn't just confirmed my decision. He had made it the only logical path forward. I pressed the end call button, my hand perfectly steady. I hadn't said a single word. After I hung up on my father, my resolve didn't just harden. It turned to ice. This wasn't just a family spat anymore. That phone call. The sheer, unadulterated entitlement. The rage. It made me realize this was now a financial decoupling. This was a liability. What if they tried to sue me? What if, in their delusion, they tried to claim I owed them a lifestyle? I contacted my personal attorney. She's one of the sharpest corporate lawyers in New York, and she doesn't handle family drama. But when I explained the situation, she immediately understood. Sarah, she said, her voice crisp and devoid of emotion. This is no longer a family issue. It's a liability issue. Your father's call is a perfect example of their perceived entitlement. We need to draw a hard, legal line to protect your assets. And Apex. From any future claims. We need to formally document their non-entitlement to your holdings. A few minutes later, an email landed in my inbox. An authorization to draft the initial cease and desist letters and financial separation notices. My cursor hovered over the authorize button. For a split second, he hesitated. Is this too much? This is my mother? My father. My brother. That little girl part of me. The one who had spent 5 years and $25 million trying to buy their approval. Still wanted to protect them. And then, as if it was projected onto my screen, a memory hit me. It was sharp. Clear as glass. Christmas. 4 years ago. We were all at the Connecticut house. My house, the fireplace roaring. The tree glittering. My father, Michael, stood up, raising his glass of wine for a toast. To Chris he beamed, his voice thick with pride. He got the news today. Yale Law. To the Miller, who will finally build a real legacy. Everyone cheered. My mother was crying tears of joy. I was buzzing, too. But for a different reason. I had just gotten off a 7-hour call that morning. My fund, Apex Strategies, had just landed its first $50 million institutional investment. It was the moment my entire life had changed. The moment I knew I wasn't just good, I was one of the best. I waited for the applause to die down. And I was smiling, vibrating with my own news. Dad, that's incredible. And I have some amazing news, too. I just landed my first $50 million client for my fund. I was so proud. I was just waiting for him to see me. My father. He laughed. A short, dismissive chuckle. He walked over, clapped me on the shoulder, his eyes already turning back to Chris. That's great, honey, he said, loud enough for the whole table to hear. It's nice you have a little hobby. A hobby. $50 million. A hobby. The memory faded. But the chill of it snapped me back to the present. The hesitation in my chest, that tiny flicker of guilt, vanished. It was replaced by cold, hard steel. They didn't see me. They had never seen me. They saw a hobbyist, a child, a charity case. I looked back at the email to my lawyer. My hand was rock steady. I clicked authorize. Then I typed a reply. Do it. Draw the hard line. And document everything. 2 days passed, in a strange, quiet blur. The angry texts from my family had slowed to a trickle, then stopped, replaced by a wall of confused, sullen silence. I was in a meeting, reviewing quarterly projections with my senior analysts. When my personal attorney's name flashed on my phone, I held up a hand. Excuse me. Everyone. I need to take this. I walked into my private office and closed the heavy glass door. The city's midday hum disappearing. Hey, I said. Is everything ready? Sarah, she replied. And her voice was completely different. The usual corporate crispness was gone. It was replaced by something grim. Something hesitant. I'm glad I caught you. I'm reviewing the financials and the formation documents for the Miller Family Trust. The one you've been funding for the last 5 years? Okay, I said, waiting. You told me your father, Michael, lost $2.3 million in the 2008 crash. Correct. That's what precipitated the family's financial problems. Yes, I said, leaning against the window. That's what he's always told us. He said he was over-leveraged, and the market turned on him. It's the whole reason I stepped in. To rebuild the fund and give them security. My lawyer took a long self. Slow breath. Sarah. He didn't lose that money. Not in the way you think. The blood in my veins turned to ice. What do you mean? Did he hide it? No, she said. It was seized. I've pulled the public court filings. Your father, Michael Miller, wasn't a victim of the 2008 crash. On a small scale, he was one of the causes of it. I stopped breathing. What are you talking about? He was charged by the SEC for felony insider trading. It was a nasty case. Apparently, he'd been trading on non-public information from a client. He got out of it with a plea deal, full forfeiture of the $2.3 million he made illegally, a $500,000 fine, and a 10-year ban from the entire securities industry. I slid into my chair. My ears were ringing. Banned from the industry. My lawyer continued. Hair voice, gentle now. Sarah. He avoided jail time. But he was ordered to pay restitution. He never paid it. The trust fund he had you rebuild? It wasn't a family fund. He was managing. He can't legally manage anything. She let the silence hang for a beat. The Miller Family Trust. Sarah. It was the restitution fund. You've been unknowingly paying off his criminal plea bargain for 5 years. The phone felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I couldn't speak. All those dinners. All those lectures about sound investments and financial responsibility from a man who was a criminal. Banned from the industry. All his pride in rebuilding the family's wealth. It was all a lie. A sick, twisted, criminal lie. He hadn't just let me fund his lifestyle. He had used me. My money. My hobby. To pay for his crimes. The deception wasn't just about his ego anymore. It was about his freedom. The $25 million I had spent. It wasn't just generosity. It was restitution. I didn't just feel angry. I felt violated. This was infinitely darker than I could have ever imagined. That weekend. The silence broke. My doorbell rang. Not the intercom for the building, but the actual, physical doorbell to my private home. I lived in a 4,000 square foot historic brownstone in the West Village. A fact I'd hidden from my family. I walked down the restored oak staircase and opened the door. It was my parents. Michael and Jennifer. They looked frantic. Their eyes wide and red. They didn't wait for an invitation. They barged past me into the foyer. Then stopped dead. They stared. They stared at the 14-foot ceilings. The restored marble. The art on the walls. The winding staircase that led up 3 more floors. What? What is this place, my mother? Jennifer stammered. Her hand was at her throat. I thought. You rented a room. I own the building. I said. My voice was flat, echoing slightly in the large space. My father, Michael, didn't even seem to register his surroundings. His bluster, his condescension, his pride, it was all gone. He looked small. He rushed toward me, his hands shaking. Sarah, please, he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. You have to help us. They're reopening the SEC case. They're saying the restitution is in default. They're talking about Yale. Sarah. Jail. For me. I just looked at him. I know. Those 2 words hit him harder than a slap. He was desperate now. Grasping at anything. I knew you were helping. Sarah. He lied. His eyes darting between me and my mother. I knew you were successful. I was testing you, to see if you'd learned responsibility. A test. This was the moment. The final partition in my mind dissolved. A test, I said. My voice was so cold. So quiet. It cut through the room. Then, you also knew that the $2.3 million you lost in 2008 wasn't lost. My father froze. You knew it was seized by the SEC for insider trading. I continued, walking slowly toward him. I have the documents. Dad. The fund I built. The one I've been funding for 5 years. It wasn't a family trust. It was a restitution fund I've been unknowingly paying off for you. You didn't lose a trust fund last week. Dad. You defaulted on your criminal plea bargain. My mother's face went white. She let out a small, strangled sound and put her hand on the wall to steady herself. Michael. What is she talking about? My father. He just crumpled. The lies were too heavy. He couldn't hold them up anymore. The entire power dynamic of our family. The one built over 29 years of his pride, and my silence. Shattered in that single, awful, quiet moment. The story ends 6 months later. I paid the final restitution. It was an anonymous wire transfer. Sent from my attorney's escrow account. A final, legal settlement. Not a gift. Not help. Just an accounting. My father avoided jail. But he and my mother lost everything else. The house in Connecticut. The cars. The lifestyle. They had to sell it all. I was in my office. Back in 1 Vanderbilt. The sun was rising over the city. I opened the complex, color-coded spreadsheet I had used to track my family's secret finances for 5 years. I looked at the grand total one last time. $25 million. Then I looked at the new balance. 0. I highlighted the file. And I hit delete. That night, for the first time I can remember, I went home and I slept through till morning. No guilt. No partition.